From day one, the president and vice president have prioritized HBCUs, ushering over $7.3 billion to HBCUs most recently. We're fighting a far-right Republican Congress that wants to shut down government. So we have our battles here, but the president and vice president are not giving up, and we're committed to ensuring that HBCUs not only get the funding that they need, but have a seat at the table as we think about higher education improvements.
Hey, GRIO fam, it's Gerren Keith Gaynor, White House correspondent and managing editor of politics at theGrio, and I'm here with Education Secretary Miguel Cardona. Secretary, always a pleasure to have you.
Yeah, great to be with you, Gerren.
So the White House and Department of Education released a report in the aftermath of the Supreme Court decision on affirmative action with strategies for higher education to advance diversity and opportunity. Could you tell us some of the top line recommendations that you make in this report?
Absolutely. Look, first of all, we believe the Supreme Court got it wrong, and we thought that the message that it sends is the wrong message that we need in our country. So we right away got together with college leaders, civil rights folks to talk about what we could do better to make sure that our campuses are as beautifully diverse as our country. And we broke it up into 4 different areas. First is outreach. You know, how are college leaders and universities outreaching better to make sure that we're getting all students an opportunity to go to higher education? Admission practices is something that we're focusing on. What are we looking at? Are we looking at the holistic child or just a test score? You know, we have to be a little bit more holistic to value the lived experience and the adversity that many of our students have had to overcome, which make them stronger. Affordability is another one too. You know, how are universities supporting students getting in, if they're capable of getting in, but the funding is what's holding them back. And then completion is another area. It's not enough to get them in college. It's another thing to make sure that they cross the graduation stage. So the report is broken up into those 4 major parts with a lot of detail, a lot of examples, and we know it's going to be a great resource.
And beyond recommendations, is the DOE looking at ways to, I guess, sort of enforce diversity, or maybe even penalize schools that are very selective that maybe won't prioritize diversity? Is there any way to enforce it in any kind of way beyond recommendations?
Right. You know, the U.S. Department of Education's role is limited in terms of what authority and power we can exercise around that. Look, we expect that education leaders want to make sure that all students have access. We can incentivize use of programs or grants. And, you know, I mean, in those very rare cases where we feel that actions may be discriminatory or not inclusive, you know, we can look into it further to determine whether or not financial aid should be going to those universities. So what we're doing right now is putting a report out with input from leaders. And we plan on not only putting the report out, but messaging it, working with colleges, working with states to make sure that they're doing everything in their power to take advantage of a growing number of diverse students in our pre-K through 12 schools.
And I don't have to tell you how the climate, as it relates to race, is thick, if you will. And in this report, there's also a mention of creating safe environments for Black and Brown and other minority students on these college campuses that are predominantly white. Could you speak to just the importance of ensuring a safe environment, and what recommendations are made on that end?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. You know, I remember visiting universities in the last 2.5 years that have done an exceptional job making sure students felt seen and welcome. And that has to be deliberate. That doesn't just happen. So in the report, we have examples of what universities could do to make sure students are connected to the university, connected to one another, and supported and seen for who they are. Oftentimes, part of the retention issues is when students are not welcome or don't feel welcome into a community. So we do address that, and we hear from college presidents that are doing it really well on what they're doing. Look, at the end of the day, man, for this country to thrive, we need to take advantage of the beautiful diversity in our country and give all students opportunities. The Supreme Court set us back, but I'm really confident with this report, with a collective will to ensure that all students have access, we're going to take steps forward in this country.
And the report also mentions the need to continue investing in HBCUs, and it's HBCU week, actually.
Right.
What can you tell us about the president's upcoming budget as it relates to HBCUs? Will there be increased funding, or do you think Congress will approve increased funding?
Well, as a Morehouse grad yourself, you know how important HBCUs are to this country. I've always said they punch above their weight, right? We know HBCUs, despite having decades of underinvestment, are producing the highest percentages of Black professionals in our country. And we need to make sure that they continue to thrive. From day one, the president and vice president have prioritized HBCUs, ushering over $7.3 billion to HBCUs most recently. We're fighting a far-right Republican Congress that wants to shut down government. So we have our battles here, but the president and vice president are not giving up, and we're committed to ensuring that HBCUs not only get the funding that they need, but have a seat at the table as we think about higher education improvements.
And quickly, you mentioned the looming shutdown, and there have been some calls for student loan payments to be paused again with repayment coming up, given the shutdown that could happen. Is the White House having any conversation about potential pausing of student loans again?
When the debt ceiling negotiations took place, it was required that the payments start up again. And that was something that the president and speaker had to shake hands on and agree to keep the government open. Now, they reneged on that, right? Which is unfortunate, but it was Congress that put an end to any potential conversations about further extending the pause. With that, I want to remind listeners that we have the SAVE plan where they could sign up, and it's an income-driven repayment plan that acknowledges income levels before assessing how much people actually owe. It's the most affordable plan. And then we also have a grace period of about a year where if people are struggling to make payments, we're not going to penalize them. We are looking out for borrowers. We're going to continue looking out for borrowers, and we're going to continue fighting for debt relief.
And lastly, as it relates to this report, will there be maybe a follow-up to an update on how institutions are perhaps following these guidelines?
We're going to keep a close eye on this, and we're going to continue to work with our higher education partners. We're going to look at data, and we're going to find out areas where they're struggling with it. And where we're hearing from students maybe that they're not feeling welcome. For us, it's really important that we're all on board here to make sure that our campuses are diverse. The Supreme Court even acknowledged the fact that diverse campuses are better places to learn. So we have our work cut out for us. Yes, we're going to be monitoring this, not only because of the report, but because it's part of our value system that all students feel welcome and have access to higher education.
Secretary Miguel Cardona, thank you again for your time.
Of course, take care.